Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy. Now, this is the show where we talk about all things FinOps, about generative AI, how to help you get the most value out of your AWS spend. My name is Stephen Barr.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahul Subramaniam, and it is getting exciting by the day. We have a very special event coming up in Vegas in just about 30 days.
Well, I want to show you the most terrifying website I've seen. Ready? 34 days to go. Countdown to AWS reInvent. Now, there's been some terrifying websites out there. The one where the monster pops up when you're looking at that peaceful field.
Oh, hello, relaxing meadow. I'm so relaxed and calm looking at you right now. Oh, no, Scary Goal just popped up. I'm so scared. Really?
But this takes the cake as far as if you are running a booth there and you're gathering up all your swag and you're shipping it down to Vegas and finalizing your hotel recommendations. Maybe you forgot to book. If that is you, pause the show, get on, book your hotel, and then come back.
Absolutely. Finding a hotel room almost became impossible 3 weeks ago, at least the ones, which are in the vicinity of all the events happening. Very, very hard to get. So if you haven't done it already, go, figure out a place where you're going to stay. Get your reInvent passes, get all that in place if you haven't done that already. We are going to be at reInvent, and we would love to meet up with you, talk to you, hear from you about what you are up to. So if you are going to reInvent as well, please do reach out to us.
Absolutely. Reach out to myself, to Rahul, to Brandon. We are going to be there. Come and talk to us about how to spend less on AWS. We are not doing a big fancy booth this year. We're doing one-on-ones and love to chat with you, get the best value out of your cloud spend. Let's spend a bit of time talking about reInvent. Whether it's your first one or your 10th, I think it's always good to go over some of that. First of all, what was your first reInvent like? And what did you think about it?
I think my very first reInvent, I felt a bit lost. I think this was 8 or 9 years ago. I've lost track of time. But during my first reInvent, I just felt so out of place. I have not seen a conference with that many people all in one place. I think at that time there were 30,000 odd people at reInvent, and that just felt overwhelming. I did not know where to go. I had not planned my schedules well enough. We didn't have the app, the reInvent app that actually helps you, figure out where you should be and what you can and cannot do. So I felt rather overwhelmed. I felt extraordinarily tired. I had the wrong attire. I had the wrong shoes, and I was dehydrated. I did most things that you would get wrong. So I want to make sure that when we talk about, what to do at reInvent, giving all the advice that we can about how to survive.
Now, we had a great episode last year with Rohini Gaonkar about how to get ready for reInvent. I'll put a link to that in the description. All of the advice still applies. I think one of them is get over your fear of missing out. You're going to miss out on so many great things. You're going to miss out on great parties. You're going to miss out on a great talk. But why are you going to miss out? Because you're going to be in something else that's great. You're going to be in a great conversation. Or maybe you're just going to crash in your hotel room because you're up till 3 a.m. the night before in a great conversation and you need to rest. So it's okay. A lot of the stuff is going to be there available online. But if you're in a good conversation, stick with it, because that's really where the value comes from. The people I've met there, and there's really good discussions you can have. It's really about the people. The content you can get anytime.
So I think that's absolutely right. reInvent is about the people. You will get access to AWS folks who are there on the ground, who are willing to talk to you, who are excited to talk to you, and they will hear you out. They will give you their feedback. They will give you their insights about what they're seeing. So make the most of it. It is all about the people. If you're going to a session, make sure that it's not just about, sitting in and listening on the content, but you want to meet with the people who are giving you those sessions or who are doing those talks. Set up as many meetings as you can with other folks who might be in a similar industry, who you can learn from. Or, folks who want to learn from you, be open to the idea of coming in and sharing your insights, because again, this is an amazing community that we are all a part of, and everyone loves to share. Everyone wants to learn more from the others. So, be open to, also sharing your insights. This is not a secrets club. The sessions will all be online later. So if it's just about the content, that's going to be available later. But it's very rare that you get to have this many people all come into one place for a period of 4 or 5 days where you get to interact with them one-on-one. I will tell you this from all my experience of the years. Everyone is incredibly down to earth. Even folks who seem like celebrities online, they will take the time to talk to you. They will take the time to interact with you and literally treat everyone like a community. So I love the experience of reInvent. and just meeting with people, talking to them, and learning from them.
One of the most useful conversations that I had there, I was with folks from our engineering team. We had some burning questions about EventBridge, and I messaged a guy who I was friendly with on Twitter, who is an Amazon product manager for EventBridge. We met near our booth, but the booth was way too loud, and so we went around the corner to the catering area where the catering staff was setting up the next round of coffees and snacks, gathered around a pallet and some shipping materials, and just had a good 20-minute chat about EventBridge. And you're right, it wasn't in some fancy conference room. There was no lunch or anything. It was just right to the facts, right what we needed to know. What's happening now? Are we using it right? What's happening in 3 months from now? We're thinking about building this. And we got all of the questions that we needed to answered. It was so efficient. I'm really glad that the EventBridge PM came and gave us that time.
Yeah, and reInvent is also an amazing place where you have all the specialists, all the experts. There are tons of booths that are dedicated to solving, problems within a domain, problems within a certain community within AWS. There are all the experts all in one place. So don't miss out on a chance to building those relationships, talking to these people, getting their contacts so that you can reach out to them later if you can't make it during those 4 or 5 days. Those 4 or 5 days are going to be very, very packed. Try and reach out to them in advance. Try and set up some time when you can. Make time to engage with people. Make time to meet with people.
Yeah, exactly. Your schedule is not like Tetris. You do not need to fill in every single square. In fact, it can be to your advantage to leave some gaps there. Also, if you haven't done it before, look at the locations of various things. Just because the 2 hotels are next to each other on Google Maps does not mean that getting from one room in one hotel is going to involve 3 really crowded escalator rides, probably getting lost along the way, bumping into somebody, getting into the other hotel, another couple of escalator rides. It takes like 20 minutes at least. And that's if you're really focused on getting from one place to another. It could take 45.
Yeah, so that's tip number 1. It's all about the people. Make sure you're making all the connections. I think the second tip is just, like I said, distances can be huge. Make sure you're wearing comfortable clothing and comfortable shoes. This is not a very formal event, so you don't have to be in a tie and jacket if this is the first time that you're coming into, reInvent. You can be dressed casually. Make sure you have comfortable shoes because there's going to be a ton of walking.
Well, not just that. Some people actually make it a point of having really cool sneakers for reInvent. And to be on the lookout, I know Darko puts a lot of work into the really cool shoes he has. So keep an eye out on that, but don't feel like you need to get your leather Alan Edmonds. In fact, you would probably regret that if you do. That's the other one. Oh yeah, make sure to get your hoodie. This is the reInvent 2023 hoodie. It's gray. The year before that, 2022, was black and had this great spider web pattern on it. Put that over there. And then you're going to run into lots of people. Follow the reInvent hashtags on Twitter. Oh, here's another one. If you are planning on uploading a lot of content, good luck. Everyone else is planning on that too, and it's really hard to get a lot of upload bandwidth. So you are probably not going to be live streaming in 4K from the Expo floor. That's just not going to happen. Plan ahead. If you're going to get media out, just plan ahead for that. Maybe get a hotspot with a different provider or backup if it's really important. Bandwidth is hard to come by. We're a bunch of tech people all showing up in one place, glued to our phones.
That said, we are going to try and do a show from Vegas live, where every morning we bring in all the latest. We try and do that really early. I think last time we started at 6 a.m. or something like that. We will try and get the most of the bandwidth while everyone else is sleeping to try and air a show live talking about everything that's happening on the ground. So even if you're not able to make it to Vegas, please tune into the show. You will at least get the most important tidbits on the show.
And let's see, we have to do a simplified setup. Last year, I think I brought 4 or 5 hard cases, maxed out on my carry-ons. I'm going to try and figure out a simplified setup. So there might not be 5 or 6 different camera angles, but we will get you the best information that we can.
Absolutely.
So reInvent's about 60,000 people. It's one of the bigger conferences out there, but I heard that the Dreamforce conference beats that by about an extra 100. Have you ever been there?
No, I was invited to Dreamforce this time, but we had other folks from the org who went to it. I can't imagine another 100,000 people.
I had a friend.
I don't even know how it would be managed.
Well, I had a friend who accidentally went to San Francisco that week. And why are all the hotels $1,200 a night for the 2-star hotels? And it's because Dreamforce is 170,000 people in one of the most expensive cities on earth. So Vegas.
I didn't know that San Francisco could handle it.
Well, I think how do you say it? Supply and demand meet, but those two curves are intersecting at a phenomenally high price point. I think Vegas is the way to go for that.
Okay, so with reInvent kind of there, we are going to, for the next at least couple of weeks, we will continue reiterating all this stuff, give you more tips and tricks about what to do at reInvent. I think we have a certain set of sessions like that we'd like to bring up to your attention. If you haven't looked at these already, please take a look at it. So what are we going to talk about?
Well, let's look at the cloud financial management sessions. I'll put this on screen. Let's have a look here. There we go. Cloud financial management sessions. I'll put a link to this. This is if you're in the FinOps, if you care about how much things cost, this is good. And this is written by our friend Bowen Wang. Her episode is coming up very soon. And this is really good if you're managing your organization's AWS spend and planning to dedicate time at 2024 reInvent to learn about solutions that can help you better manage and optimize your AWS cost and usage. Take a brief pause and read on this blog post. Yep. So there's several different types of talks as we go through this. Let's talk about the different types of talks that are available. So the first one here is breakout. So what is a breakout session? So people aren't surprised when they show up. What is a breakout session? How is that different from a standard talk?
So there are talks that are on the main stage, which are called the standard talks, which are basically AWS presenting their view about, new announcements, new services, and the roadmap. So things like that are basically on the main stage. And those are one set of talks. The second one is what I call breakouts, where the specialists basically take very specific point problems and they present their perspective, they present their solutions. Those are breakout sessions. Breakout sessions are typically mostly one way during the talk, but at the end of it, you will have a Q&A session where the audience is invited to ask questions and you can interact with the speakers at the end of it. The third type is called a chalk talk. A chalk talk is actually meant to be very interactive right from the get-go. They will be, presenting a solution. They will be giving their perspectives. They will also try and involve the audience as much as possible in the conversation about that specific topic. They will invite comments. They will invite suggestions. They will invite perspectives. All of that will happen during the chalk talk. And then it's also meant to be deep dive sessions. And then the last one is what are called code talks, where if you really want to get into the code level details, this is where the specialist will actually pull up code, look at code samples, walk through how things are working, show you live demos, show you live code. There'll be working sessions like that. Lastly, you have the hands-on workshops, which literally you will be sitting with your laptop with the specialists working through certain exercises or certain pre-worked out coding sessions or hands-on sessions, which will help you really understand how things work for yourself.
And speaking of code talks, the one that Bowen has highlighted here is with our friends Steph Gooch and also Justin Marks. So please check out this one over at the Win Advanced Analytics with AWS Cost and Usage Report. We've had Steph on our show several times. I've been on Build On with Steph and Darko on their cost optimization day. Steph challenged me to write a Kerr query live, and she's really, really, really good at it. So definitely you will learn a lot from her. Just looking through this list, it's really, really good, folks. Meredith, we've had Meredith on the show before. That was episode 48. Creating effective FinOps KPIs. Let's see, proactive cost control strategies for AWS workloads. These are okay, and this is cool. This is repeat Thursdays. This is interesting. They actually look at the demand and can open up new sessions.
Correct.
So we have awesome chalk.
So there are multiple sessions. You might find multiple sessions for the same talk across the 4 days. So if you can't find, a session slot in one, go look for another one. Ones that are in demand will typically see multiple sessions open up.
Now, COP 204, this is with what's new with AWS cost optimization. This one, I don't know if you can even get into this one anymore. So this one you might even just plan on getting this online. This is with Letian Fang and Rick Oakes. We've had both of them on the show. We did our reInvent wrap-up stream with them. I'll put a link to that in the description. They've just expanded Compute Optimizer quite a bit over the last couple of months. They basically support all the instance types now. Getting involved with cost, that'll be a really good one. This one will be hilarious. COP218. This is with Bowen, Matt, Burke, and Corey Quinn. I think if you are in the AWS cost optimization world, you know Corey. That will be fun and definitely opinionated. So if you can get into that one, that will be a good one as well. So this will be interesting. Controlling the cost of your generative AI services. I guess this is going to be about model management. Should you throw everything in Opus or should you use Haiku? Right? What models to use? How do you optimize token counts? I'm really curious to see what they're
and
going
also
to
what
say.
services you use, whether you should stick with Bedrock, whether you should use SageMaker for where it makes sense. So these are going to be very interesting sessions for all of you. If you haven't looked at the schedule already, please go take a look at this page. Some really amazing talks. But again, like we said earlier, if you miss some of them, that's totally fine. Make use of this opportunity to go meet with all these amazing folks who are doing these talks. They are the experts. They know this space inside out. There's Yuri who's going to talk about visualizing all this stuff. They have an amazing tool, the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard that Yuri has been a part of. He's been on the show multiple times. Go meet with them. Build those amazing relationships. They are incredible people who will support you, who will help you in the long run. So, make those connections as a priority.
Yeah. And go follow them on LinkedIn. Follow them now. So that way, they're available. That way you can send them a message. Most of them are going to be open. I'm sure they're going to get flooded with messages, but do the best you can, or just go to the talk and stand by the door. And give yourself time, right? So if you are in this event, right, book yourself another hour afterwards, because there's going to be several great conversations evolving after this that you're going to want to be a part of. So,
exactly.
And then there's the FinOps Foundation networking event that was right here. So lots of good things. And also the Cloud Financial Management Kiosk in the Expo Hall. That's going to be staffed with AWS folks. So this is a useful page to follow if you are in this cloud financial world, if you care about your cloud costs. And again, Rahul and I are going to be around too. Please reach out to us. Also, our CEO of CloudFix, Brandon. So we'd love to be part of that conversation. All right. Well, so that is the cloud financial management sessions. Should we go on to the next category that we want to talk about?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay. Actually, Rick posted a really neat link. Again, speaking of following these folks on LinkedIn, Rick posted a link to this talk, one of the ones highlighted about, and I like how he set it up. This is an opportunity to speak with the product manager for SPRIs, savings plans and reserved instance recommendations, about developing customized AWS purchase optimization strategy. So, Rahul, for those who are new to savings plans and RIs, how should they kind of approach this, and also the subject in general?
Yeah, so I think if you're new to AWS, we generally recommend that you start with savings plans. It's the easiest way to get started without having to break your head over all the very nuanced details about how you optimize all these discount plans for yourself. It's more important at that stage to make sure that you're using the services the right way. You understand the technical details behind the services, and you're spending your time making sure that your workloads are operating in the most efficient way technically. So just starting up with a savings plan, making sure that you have everything in place with a limited commit. Do a 1 year instead of a 3 year. Just get started with it. That makes more sense. But as you grow, as the scope of your workloads increases, where you're spending a few $1 million every year, that's when I think it's time that you start thinking about understanding how your workloads are structured, how they're going to look like over the year, and then decide on a more customized plan, which can be combinations of SPs and RIs or CRIs. RIs generally, there's a convertible reserved instances as well. There are trade-offs with all three. There are pros and cons, and you might want a good combination of multiple solutions that get you to the right answer. Spot, for example, might be a better solution for some ephemeral workloads, or where your workload basically increases dynamically for a short period of time and then just comes down to near zero. Spot might be a good answer for those. So between your SPs, RIs, and CRIs, you might have a good customized combination that you might want to look at. So this would be a really good session to see what other folks are doing, to understand what the offerings are and dive into those details. So yeah, please do that. And if you want to come and talk to us about all the experience we've had about managing SPs, RIs, CRIs, and very specifically custom cost optimization plans for these discount programs, you should come and talk to us, and we'd love to share our insights. And we'd love to know about what your problem is. It's always interesting to see what kind of situations folks have, and what interesting. It's almost like this big complex puzzle where you're constantly trying to figure out what the most. It's like optimal bin packing. You're trying to figure out how best to solve one particular kind of contour of usage.
Well, I see it a lot. It's very similar to the problem that the grid faces, right? Where you have certain types of power, like nuclear and gas, where they're slow to spin up, and then there's other ones like solar and other types of renewables, which might depend on the weather and which might be more reactive to load. And so you want to get an optimal mix of those things based on changing availability and changing demand to really get it right. And
correct,
you could pay the on-demand rate for everything. Right? I think that's the mistake that people make when they first get into AWS. They say, okay, we need 100 servers of this type. So I'm going to look at the on-demand price and multiply that times 24 times 365. And then they get surprised at that price.
Correct.
Well, you could do that and they won't stop you, but there's better ways to do that. And especially maybe you know that you need 50 all the time, but some of it could be covered by Lambda. Some of it could be covered by EKS running Carpenter and Spot. And
exactly.
As you start better managing your mix to meet the demand at a lower price where everyone wins.
Exactly. So yeah, there's tons to learn. Again, a really interesting session. See if you can attend this session. There's going to be tons of insights, tons of learning. And you should feel free to share your problem with these folks who can also then recommend the best solution for you.
Absolutely. I haven't met Mary or Wade yet, but having spoken to Rick quite a few times, he genuinely cares to make sure you are not spending more than you have to. It's pretty amazing talking to him. He really is a good advocate for the customer. And even though he's works for AWS, he's totally happy if you're giving them less money, because that's how customer loyalty and customer satisfaction is built in the long run.
I couldn't agree more. And in fact, you should check out our previous episodes where we have we've had Rick on the show. He's amazing to talk to, and like Stephen just said, incredibly focused on making sure that you as a customer are going to be successful. So don't miss out a chance to connect with him. I think he's also going to be there on at the FinOps meet and greet or the networking session. So don't miss out a chance to meet with him there if you miss him on the floor or during one of the other sessions.
Awesome. So follow all these folks on LinkedIn. I'm also working on a blog post. I'll have all their LinkedIn profiles linked to the blog post. So have a look out for that on cloudfix.com/blog. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the AWS news announcements and a new case study that, funny enough, closes a conversation that we started a while ago. We'll be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix uses AWS recommended savings techniques. It fixes, not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the link to start saving now.
Okay, we are back. Our first announcement we want to go over, Amazon RDS now supports M7i and R7i database instances. So these are the latest Intel-based offering and available with maximum instance size of 48XL. So 50% more vCPU and memory than the maximum size of M6i and R6i. So if you have an M6i or an R6i RDS database, is this a definite upgrade, or is this a wait and see, or should you resize at the time? How do you parse this as an existing RDS database user?
Okay, so if you're already on an M6i or an R6i, it always helps to get to the latest instance, the latest version of that instance family, because it only the instances just get better and cheaper. The price performance is always getting better with every generation. So you always want to stay on the latest generation, and that would be a no-brainer. However, if you're on other instance types, then it depends on what kind of load your database is running. If you're running 80%, utilization for most of the time, and then every occasionally it hits, peak utilization, then an I instance is way better than a standard, M7D or an R7D. So you will have to look at what your utilization looks like. And if you're going to not have 100% utilization all the time, the I's make sense to move to.
Now, in terms of RDS instances, I'm looking at the RDS instance types. I'll put this on the page here. Like for RDS, if you have the largest size database, okay, look at that. They haven't even updated it yet. So if we look at M6I,
I think they'll be in the memory optimized. They won't be in general purpose. You might find them in the memory optimized.
Well, I just think they haven't updated it yet.
Oh yeah, the R6Is are here.
Yeah, because the M6Is should be here. So I think the M7I, have a look. It will be eventually. It will be here. So have a look. It's now the 4th generation Intel Xeon, but the largest you can get here is a 32x large. So
Correct.
if you
and
are
now
really
you can do the 48
yes
XL.
And then I think same with the memory optimized. So if we look at the R6I, we're going to see it topping out at 32x large. So we have definitely gotten a size jump, and same with the Gravitons, right? So if we look at the Graviton, let's look at the M7G, we could get up to 16x large. So if you need that single instance performance, we usually recommend Gravitons as a good option, but you can't get that size and that memory on Gravitons currently. So we'll have to. So this is a definite option if you are needing that enormous instance size. Now, if you're on a smaller one, like a 16x large or a 12x large, you might want to look at switching to Graviton as well, because that's going to be cheaper than your Intel equivalent. And for most database loads, I guess if you're using a certain extension, maybe, what are the architecture-specific needs of RDS for most usage?
Yeah, I think AWS has kind of already built in support for all the databases across Intel, AMD, and Graviton. So there's very little risk or very little to worry about in terms of moving to one of these instance types. It all just depends on what kind of workload you're running, and you can optimize the instance type and instance family for the kind of spikes you're going to see in your workload. That's really the variable with RDS. I think scoping it down to RDS is amazing from the AWS standpoint. It makes it really easy for you to pick an instance. You can always be guaranteed that it'll work because they're all certified. All of the instance types are certified across all those specific databases that are offered there. The question just is, how is your workload going to look like in terms of your usage and performance?
Absolutely. So how do we rate this article then, given the scope? Let's just have a look at some of the details. It gives you the version availability. They're available in some of the major regions here.
Yep, and they'll follow in others. I would give this a 3 or a 3.5, purely because they didn't coordinate to get everything else updated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like for instance type. If you wanted to dive into the details, it's just not there.
Yeah, so let's look at the pricing page. Is it there? So it's the RDS pricing page, and you go to pricing. Where would it? Yeah, we just looked. They weren't in. Where is it?
No, we actually looked at the instance types, and it wasn't in there.
I wonder if it's on the pricing by RDS engines. Well, that's not going to be there.
No.
Oh, pricing by RDS. Yeah, so they should coordinate better, because if we're looking at the Amazon RDS over here on their RDS instance overview, it's not there yet. So well deserved 3 on that one, but they're moving fast. Everyone is in the reInvent crunch time.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think these are some of the relatively more minor announcements. I expect that they're reserving all the really big ones now for reInvent. So would be excited to see what's coming down in terms of the new instance families and the new instance types. This one I'd also add simplifies, because again, moving from the previous generation to the next generation, and you have more CPUs as options. So as your workload scales, as your workload grows, you can now stay within the same family without having to switch over. You don't need to have another instance. When you cross your 32 Excel limits, you can now just move up to an 48 Excel if you really need it. So I think overall it simplifies. It doesn't add more complexity for sure.
And then I would say it is still true that scaling up is easier than scaling out. If you can just throw a bigger instance at it, that's easier than doing multiple instances and fail over and all that stuff. Even if Amazon manages it for you, it's just still easier to just throw a bigger machine at it.
Agreed. And remember that 90% of workloads even today still happen to be monolithic, old school, enterprise, solutions which rely on one database at a time. So it makes sense to have a bigger machine. It's more efficient to just do that in those scenarios.
Now, taking a quick moment from the CloudFix perspective, if you are a CloudFix customer, definitely check on your CloudFix RDS Finder fixers. There's a lot of useful Finder fixers, both on instance resizing and also on your alert for extended support. So as you look at this, there's all these version numbers. If you have old RDS instances around that are on old versions of Postgres, you are automatically opted into extended support, and that is double in year 1 and 2 and triple in year 3. You definitely want to know, and CloudFix with their extended support warnings, it can't move it over for you because there's a reason you're stuck on that old version, but it can give you a big warning saying, hey, this is coming. You don't want this to be a surprise because you are opted into this.
The one thing that I'll also add is that with all these new generation of instances coming on board, that gap of how much more expensive the old stuff gets is just going to keep increasing. The price performance of the newest generations are significantly better than the previous ones, and therefore the overall cost of managing those databases on a relative scale is actually going to keep increasing as time passes. So it might be worth the effort to go figure out how to upgrade your RDS instances that are running MySQL 5 or that are not on 8, 5.7. If you're running MySQL 5.7, you want to figure out how to get it to MySQL 8 as quickly as possible so that you can make use of all these new instances.
And it is that key that newer generation, because you can't just compare cores to cores and specs to specs. And actually, this is a funny little aside. I was looking at a refurbished Mac Mini for a little project, and I asked Claude, here, compare a 2018 Apple Mac Mini 3 gigahertz Core i5, 32 gigs of RAM, 512 SSD, with a 2020 Mac Mini M1, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 SSD. So you'd think, okay, a fourth the RAM and slower clock speed. The 2018 one seems like it's still in the race here. But no, look at the comparison. Single core performance is 50% faster. Multi-core is 20 to 30% faster. GPU is 3 times better. The M1 is more supported. While 32 versus 8 seems like a big difference, you have to think about the M1 memory architecture. So there's the newer generation. It's not just faster and more, but there's other architecture stuff. So when we talk about price performance, if you compare instance size old to the same instance size new, it looks like it's more expensive, but you might be able to step down in instance size.
Exactly.
And so that's where you get that savings.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I said, being on the latest generation of the instances is an absolute no-brainer. You should not be stuck on the older generations. And that's the beauty of the cloud. You can actually switch whenever you want. You're not stuck with old hardware that's sitting in your data center that you had paid for upfront. You can literally switch the day after a new instance type is announced.
All right, we have another LinkedIn post we want to cover. This is a LinkedIn post from Jeff Barr, who highlighted a really nice case study. So AWS customer Audi AG, so the Audi cars, saved 60% on compute costs, improving scalability for their car configurator. Where they migrated to the cloud, adopted Graviton, Spot, Carpenter, and it was good things. He links to the case study. The case study is right here. These are fun to read. They're not as in-depth technical, but it's a neat overview of the technologies that are being used to accomplish this. So what I say is this closes the loop. We had a great talk with Rick, and we somehow got into car configuration. Rahul, can you tell us about that and your history with a car configurator?
Yeah, so I worked on a lot of configurators for the automotive business about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. That was the frontier of AI. Because when you look at car configuration, right, let's say there were 10 options you had, whether it's the outer color, the trim, the model, the kind of engine, the kind of stereo system, the ABS or non-ABS. When you look at all of these options, let's say there were 10 options, and you had in those 10 categories, you had say 5 options each. And when it comes to colors and stuff, there are usually a lot more. So if you had 10 categories and 5 options each, you're already talking about 10 to the power 5, different combinations. Or is it 5 to the power 10? I think it's 10 to the power 5, right? No, it's 5 to the power 10. Yeah, so if you have 10 categories and 5 options each, it's 5 to the power 10, which is an insanely large number. And then to enumerate all of those possible configurations, you don't want to give your customers that kind of choice, right? When you go into a site and you say, okay, I want this particular color and this particular inner trim and this radio. If you did all possible configurations, you'd be building billions and billions of possible cars, and that doesn't fit the assembly line model really well. So instead, what car companies do is that while you have those options, when you are in a configurator, they will narrow down what you are actually able to order. So from trillions and trillions of configurations, they'll narrow down to maybe a few 100,000 configurations that they are willing to, kind of provide some flexibility on. And that's a huge problem to be able to offer to a customer online. Like, how do you define what is allowed and what is not allowed?
Yeah, and there's still not a great UI for it, right? If you go and go to your favorite car manufacturer and you say build a car, I know mine's those are good floor mats. And you click on the floor mats, and now wait, you've switched to the off-road package, and all of a sudden your engine's different, and and some of them make sense, right? You don't want stubby off-road tires on a 2-wheel drive car. Right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, and then some of them are just like you said, just to limit the scope.
Correct. And some of the constraints are also based on law. So, for example, in Canada, you cannot buy a car without fog lamps. But in the US, fog lamps on your car are optional, right? So deciding what is optional, what's mandatory, that is one other dimension of, how you configure your car. And so depending on your zip code, depending on your location, a lot of things keep changing. And that is a huge and massive problem to solve. You're literally, if you just take every component and look at the entire configuration space for a session that a user is on the website, deciding exactly what they'll be allowed to buy is a very tricky problem that, we built a lot of technology and a lot of IP around this 20 plus years ago. And it is an amazingly fun and difficult problem to work on. So again, very close to my heart in terms of, this particular thing. And I'm glad that, companies like Audi are starting to now leverage the cloud. Back then, we had one machine that had 250 MB of RAM. And that was like, we had a reserve time of that machine because you only had 250 megabytes that you could use. And imagine running a configurator with that. Today, you have gigabytes and gigabytes that can literally load up an entire configuration model of 4 billion, 10 billion, 2 trillion.
This must be very comforting here. So Audi's car configurator backend ran on premises as a monolithic application. Audi wanted to make it scalable, more resource efficient, to better handle large traffic spikes. So what if some Instagram influencer posts a video with their new Audi, I don't know, I'm not an Audi person, but a new Audi something, and all of a sudden people are flocking to the site, right? In a certain country, maybe they want to build a certain model, right? So how do you can't always plan for that. The beauty of the cloud is that you can scale up as needed. So this is neat. So let's look at what tech they're using. They're using EC2, of course, Terraform, CloudFormation, multiple regions, Kubernetes, Carpenter. So Carpenter is open source Kubernetes cluster management, which can integrate natively with Spot. So you can have Spot nodes into your cluster. You can do attribute-based instance selection. So instead of saying, I need this type of node, you can say, I need instances with this amount of RAM. Find me the cheapest ones at the Spot price.
Correct.
So that's pretty cool.
And amazingly, these configurators are also really good demand sensing tools. So, for example, before a model is actually launched, when OEMs have to figure out what exactly they need to produce in the first batch, because nobody knows what the car looks like, right? So when they're deciding what to do, they will actually put up a site with a configurator on it and let customers pick and choose what they would like to see in their car. They would like them to play around with it and decide where demand is. And then once they know the kind of demand, they can then figure out what to manufacture. So it kind of works both ways. It works to, create constraints for the customer, but it also works to understand what customers want in terms of demand. So an incredibly difficult, incredibly hard problem to solve, requires an insane amount of compute, but the cloud is almost purpose-built for a problem like this.
Well, this is a really, really neat case study on a neat industry as well. I like cars in general. And actually, I was watching Doug DeMuro. Do you know him on YouTube?
Yeah.
He does really neat car reviews. He was talking about the new, like the 2010 Ford GT. And he was talking about, okay, they offered 2 different wheel options, but almost like 99% of the models have this wheel option. No one picked the base model. Everyone upgraded because it was a $150,000 car. So why are you going to get the cheap wheels when you can press that one button and pay a little bit more for much better wheels? And like you said, there's things that actually I was watching another car podcast. They're talking about the Lamborghini Murcielago, and apparently they didn't keep records of what they were building. They just built to order as they came in, and it turns out there were certain models that became really rare with ones with a manual transmission. They just didn't build that many, but it wasn't known how many they had actually made until someone did a very careful study of the U.S. market for these things, and there was only 40 of them in the country with this transmission option that turned out to be really popular.
Wow, that is interesting. I'm surprised that they didn't have records of all of this stuff, but definitely a very, very interesting industry. I spent many years building solutions for the automotive industry, and definitely a very exciting space.
Absolutely. And just to wrap it up, my favorite automotive radio show that I still listen to, even though it's long gone, is Car Talk on NPR. That stopped being produced a long time ago, and one of the hosts died a few years ago. But I love their ability to listen to people's car problems. They'd often have people say, "What sound is this making?" They'll say, "Oh, it's making a brrr," and they'll say, "Oh, that's the bearing on this particular part. When it wears down, it makes that noise." And
I have a new Ford Aspire.
Boy, you talk about a dumb name.
Well, it aspires to be something better.
What did they think?
Well, they had narrowed it down to 2 choices. It was either Aspire or Expire.
I love their ability to diagnose that problem. So when we started this, my hope was that we could be the Car Talk of Amazon, where you could say, "My AWS account is making this noise and doing this thing," and we can help you figure that out.
Yeah, I remember that conversation we had right at the beginning, and I really hope we get to that stage where folks dial in, they tell us what their problems are, and we can solve them on this show. But looking forward to that someday.
Definitely.
Hopefully we get there.
Well, let us know what problems you have. If you need to make a sound, give us a clue. We'll do our best to diagnose it. Until then, we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.